Doctor pressed her 4 delicate hands against the viewing window of her research station. The stars that had looked so peaceful just hours ago now showed the ugly red glow of enemy ships. Her heart beat fast in her chest as she watched the horde ships move closer to her station. She was alone. The emergency evacuation had taken all the other researchers 3 days ago when the first warning signals came, but had stayed behind. Her work was too important to abandon. 20 years of research on healing organisms that could save millions of lives across the galaxy sat in the laboratories around her. They were known across space as raiders and slavers. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. People, were peaceful plant eaters who had never learned to fight. They built their society around knowledge and healing, not war and violence. Another explosion shook the station. The lights flickered and went dim. Through the communication system, she heard the cold voice of the station's computer. Warning, hull breach in Section 7. Defense systems at 20% power. Estimated time until complete system failure, 47 minutes. Hands shook as she moved to her research computer. She had to save her work somehow. 20 years of discoveries about tiny living things that could heal wounds and cure diseases faster than any known medicine. These organisms were found only on 3 planets in the entire galaxy, and her research station orbited one of them. The computer screen showed her worst fears. The ships were not just attacking. They were positioning themselves to board her station. They would take everything valuable and probably take her as a slave. The galaxy had heard the stories. They showed no mercy to anyone. Warning, enemy boarding craft detected. Hull breach in Section 4. Defense systems at 10% power. Ran through the empty corridors toward the main communication center. Her soft footsteps echoed in the metal hallways that had once been full of life and discovery. Now, they felt like a tomb waiting to be sealed. The communication center was dark except for the glow of emergency lights. Activated the long-range transmitter with desperate fingers. She had to send a message. Someone had to know about her research. Someone had to stop them from destroying everything. She opened all the emergency channels she could find and began to record her message. Her voice was high and scared, but she tried to speak clearly. This is Doctor of Research Station Gentle Current. We are under attack by forces. They will board the station soon. I am sending all research data on Project Healing Light to any ship that receives this message. Please. Someone has to continue this work. These organisms could save so many lives. She attached all her research files to the message and prepared to send it, but the computer showed her something strange. There were dozens of communication channels available. Most she recognized emergency services, nearby trading posts, research stations, military outposts of various species. But one channel was different. It was marked with warning symbols she had never seen before. Strange text in multiple languages surrounded it, but her computer could only translate part of it. Danger and DATHWORLD and restricted access. There was also a symbol that looked like a skull with strange markings around it. Another explosion rocked the station. The lights went out completely, and only emergency power remained. Through the walls, could hear the terrible sounds of metal being cut apart. They were cutting their way into her station. Warning, enemy forces have entered Section 4. Defense systems offline. Estimated time until enemy reaches main research areas, 12 minutes. Panic filled her mind. No one would answer her call in time. No rescue ship could reach her before the raiders took control. But maybe someone would find her research data after she was gone. Maybe her life's work could still help others. Without thinking clearly, she selected every communication channel available, including the strange one with all the warning symbols. Her computer asked her 3 times if she was sure she wanted to use the restricted channel. Each time, she clicked yes. What did warnings matter now? This is Doctor of Research Station Gentle Current. she said into the transmitter. "Any ship receiving this message, please help us. The Horde is boarding our station. I am transmitting research data that could save millions of lives. Please do not let this knowledge die with us." She sent the message out on all channels at maximum power. The station's communication system used the last of its energy to boost the signal as far as possible into space. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the communication center. Rough voices spoke in the harsh language, understood enough to know they were talking about taking prisoners and selling them in slave markets. She ran from the communication center toward her laboratory. If she was going to die or become a slave, she wanted to be near her life's work one last time. Behind her, she heard the communication center door being smashed open. In her laboratory, looked at the tanks full of tiny healing organisms she had studied for so many years. They glowed with a soft blue light, beautiful and peaceful. She had discovered how to make them reproduce faster and work better. With her research, these little life forms could heal wounds in minutes instead of days. The laboratory door exploded inward. 3 warriors entered, their weapons pointed at her. They were huge creatures with thick skin and sharp teeth. Their eyes were cold and cruel. One of them spoke to her in broken Galactic Standard language. "You come with us, little plant eater. You work for us now. Make useful things for Horde." Closed her eyes and hoped that somewhere in the galaxy, someone had received her message. Someone who might be able to use her research to help others. Someone who might even be able to stop them from hurting more innocent people. She did not know that her desperate message had just awakened something the galaxy had hoped would stay sleeping. Something that made the Horde look like small, frightened children. The message reached the Human Colonial Defense Network 17 minutes after Doctor sent it. It traveled through space faster than light, jumping from relay station to relay station until it arrived at a massive military base orbiting a planet called New Terra. Admiral Sarah was in her office reviewing patrol reports when the emergency communication system activated. A sharp alarm sound filled the room, and red lights flashed on her desk. She had been expecting routine updates about trade routes and pirate activity. She was not expecting what appeared on her screen. The computer voice spoke in calm, mechanical tones. "Priority 1 emergency signal received on Hunter Frequency 7. Sender, unknown alien species. Content, distress call with research data attachment. Location, Sector 47 near controlled space." Admiral sat up straight in her chair. Hunter Frequency 7 was supposed to be secret. Only a few hundred beings in the entire galaxy knew it existed. It was the frequency the human hunter fleets used when they needed to coordinate against major threats. She played the message and listened to Doctor's frightened voice. The alien sounded young and scared, clearly not a soldier or warrior. Had heard thousands of distress calls in her 30 years of military service, but something about this one made her angry. Computer, analyze the message source. How did this alien get access to Hunter Frequency 7? Analysis complete. The message was broadcast on all available emergency channels simultaneously. The sender appears to have activated Hunter Frequency 7 by accident during a panic transmission. Almost smiled. The poor alien had no idea what frequency she had used. The Hunter frequencies were marked with warnings in every known language specifically to keep normal people away from them. But desperate people sometimes made desperate choices. Computer, give me everything we know about the Horde. Information filled her screens. There were raiders who had been growing bolder over the past few years. They attacked peaceful research stations and trading posts, taking slaves and destroying anything they could not steal. Most galactic governments were too weak or too far away to stop them. Read through the reports with growing anger. They had hit 17 research stations in the past 2 years. They specifically targeted peaceful scientific missions because researchers made valuable slaves and their stations contained expensive equipment. She touched her communication device. "Get me Commander Tors in the Fleet Bay. Tell him to prepare the 7th Hunter Fleet for immediate deployment." While she waited for Tors to respond, looked out the window of her office at the ships floating in space around New Terra. The human colonial defense network maintained 12 Hunter fleets, each one designed for a specific type of threat. The 7th Fleet was her favorite. It consisted of ships built for one purpose: hunting down enemies who preyed on innocent people. The main ship was a massive dreadnought called Terra's Vengeance. Around it floated heavy cruisers, destroyers, and fighter carriers, all painted in the dark gray color that humans used for their warships. Commander Tors appeared on her screen. He was a big man with scars on his face and arms from fighting in the pacification wars. Like most human military officers, he looked like he had been born for war. "Admiral, the fleet can be ready to move in 2 hours. What's our target?" "Raiders. They hit a research station and took prisoners. We're going to remind the galaxy why humans don't negotiate with slavers." Tors smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "The crew will be pleased. We haven't had a proper hunt in months." Understood his feelings. Humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous warriors, but they did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought because there had taught them that life was precious and that predators had to be stopped. Earth had been a nightmare planet where everything tried to kill everything else. Humans survived because they became the best hunters their world had ever produced. When they reached space and met other alien species, they discovered that most other planets had been much gentler places. Other species had evolved to eat plants, or to work together in groups, or to hide from danger. Humans had evolved to chase down prey across vast distances and to fight anything that threatened their families. The Galactic Council had tried to control humanity when they first reached space. That led to the pacification wars, which ended when several advanced alien civilizations surrendered rather than face complete destruction. The Council learned that trying to cage humans only made them more dangerous. Now most species in the galaxy treated humans carefully. They were useful allies and terrible enemies. When normal diplomatic solutions failed, when pirates and raiders grew too bold, when slavers and conquerors threatened innocent people, the galaxy quietly asked for human help. Activated the fleet-wide communication system. "Attention, all ships of the 7th Hunter Fleet. We have received a distress call from a research station under attack by raiders. The enemy has taken prisoners and is destroying scientific research that could save millions of lives." She paused, knowing that her words were reaching thousands of human soldiers, pilots, and marines throughout the fleet. They believe they can prey on peaceful researchers because no one will stop them. They are about to learn why that belief is wrong. We will show them what happens when predators meet real hunters. Across the fleet, humans began preparing for war. In the marine bays, soldiers checked their weapons and armor. In the fighter hangars, pilots ran final tests on their ships. In the engine rooms, technicians pushed the massive drives to full power. Watched the preparations through her office windows. Other alien species often asked her why humans were so good at warfare. The answer was simple. They had learned on a world where everything else was also trying to kill them. But humans were not monsters. They protected the innocent, defended the weak, and only used their terrible skills when peaceful options failed. The galaxy needed guardians who were more dangerous than any threat, and evolution had created exactly what was needed. Admiral Tors reported, "All ships ready for hyperspace jump. Estimated travel time to target, 6 hours. Looked at the star charts showing the location of Doctor's research station. Begin jump sequence." And Tors, "Yes, Admiral. Tell the fleet to prepare for prisoner recovery operations. We're bringing that researcher home alive." Understood, Admiral. The hunt begins. The 7th Hunter Fleet disappeared from normal space in flashes of light, heading toward a meeting that would remind the galaxy why humans were the species other predators feared in their nightmares. The 7th Hunter Fleet arrived at the edge of the star system like a force of nature. Space itself seemed to tear open as 12 massive human warships dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously. The energy released by their arrival sent shockwaves racing through the void, lighting up every sensor within 3 million kilometers. War Chief of the Horde was enjoying his victory when his ship's alarms started screaming. He had just finished inspecting the valuable research equipment his warriors had stolen from the alien station. The small plant-eating researcher was now locked in his ship's cargo hold with the other prisoners. War Chief, his communications officer shouted across the bridge. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, large signatures. Move to the sensor display with confident steps. Probably some local patrol ships coming to investigate. They had dealt with angry neighbors before. Most species sent 1 or 2 ships to demand the return of prisoners, made threats they could not enforce, then left when the Horde showed its strength. What he saw on the screen made his blood turn cold. 12 ships hung in space like sleeping monsters. The largest was bigger than anything in the fleet. All of them were painted dark gray, the color of deep space and death. Their design was different from any ship had ever seen. Where most species built their ships with elegant curves and bright colors, these vessels looked like they were built for one purpose only. War Chief, his sensor operator said in a shaking voice, I'm reading weapon signatures that don't match anything in our database. What species? Demanded. Unknown, War Chief, but the energy readings they're massive. On board the research station, Doctor was still locked in her laboratory under guard. 2 warriors watched her while she sat among her broken equipment. They had destroyed most of her work, keeping only what looked valuable to sell. The station's sensors were still working and could access some of the displays from her position. When the new ships appeared on the screen, she felt a flutter of hope. Someone had received her message after all. But these ships looked different from any rescue vessels she knew about. They were huge and dark and somehow frightening even to look at. She wondered what kind of species built ships that looked so hungry. Admiral stood on the bridge of Terra's Vengeance and studied the tactical display. They had 8 ships surrounding the research station. They were older designs, built for raiding and intimidation rather than serious combat, perfect targets for what she had planned. Analysis complete, Admiral, reported her tactical officer. 8 enemy ships, mixed classes. They have the research station surrounded and are currently looting it. I'm detecting approximately 40 prisoners on board their vessels. Life signs on the research station. Minimal. Looks like 1 person still alive in the main laboratory section. Nodded. That would be Doctor, the alien who had accidentally called for help on the Hunter frequency. She was still alive, which meant there was still time to save her. Communications. Open a channel to the ships. Channel open, Admiral. His voice carried across space with calm authority. Vessels, this is Admiral of the Human Colonial Defense Network. You are holding prisoners taken illegally from a peaceful research station. Release them immediately. On the command ship, listened to the transmission with growing confusion. Humans. He had heard stories about humans, but he had always assumed they were myths created to frighten young warriors. What do our records say about humans? He asked his intelligence officer. The officer worked at his console for several minutes before responding. War Chief, most of our information comes from legends and rumors, but according to what records we have, humans are dangerous. How dangerous? The records claim they come from a death world where everything tries to kill everything else. They supposedly ended 3 different galactic wars by making their enemies too frightened to continue fighting. Laughed, but it sounded forced. Myths and stories. No single species is that powerful. But even as he spoke, he was looking at the sensor readings from the human ships. The energy signatures were unlike anything he had ever seen. The ships themselves were massive, built like fortresses that could fly through space. "Send them our standard response," ordered. "Tell them the prisoners belong to us now, and they should leave before we add their ships to our fleet." Admiral received the response and allowed herself a thin smile. Typical raiders, they think being loud makes them strong. She activated the fleet communication system. "All ships assume attack formation. Rules of engagement, disable rather than destroy. We want prisoners for interrogation, and we want those research station captives back alive." Throughout the human fleet, thousands of warriors prepared for battle with practiced efficiency. In the fighter bays, pilots climbed into ships designed for speed and lethality. In the marine sections, soldiers checked weapons that fired projectiles instead of energy beams, because humans had learned that sometimes physical force worked better than advanced technology. On the research station, watched through the sensor displays as the two fleets faced each other. The human ships were moving into position with smooth, coordinated movements. They looked like a pack of predators surrounding their prey. Her guards were talking nervously in their own language. Even they seemed worried about these new arrivals. "War Chief," the communications officer called out, "the human ships are powering up weapons. Energy readings are going beyond maximum scale." Stared at the tactical display. The human ships were not positioning themselves for a normal space battle. Instead, they were spreading out to cut off all escape routes from the system. It was the movement pattern of hunters, not warriors. "All ships battle positions," he ordered. "Prepare to show these humans what happens when someone challenges the horde." But as his ships moved to fight, felt something he had not experienced in many years. Fear. Real, deep fear that made his hands shake and his heart beat too fast. The human ships were not responding like normal enemies. They were not trying to scare the into retreating. They were not demanding negotiations or offering terms for surrender. They were simply moving into position to kill everything that threatened their target. Admiral watched the ships form their battle line and felt the familiar calm that came before combat. These raiders had made a simple mistake. They had hurt innocent people and thought no one would make them pay for it. They were about to learn what humans did to predators who preyed on the helpless. "All ships," she said quietly into her communicator, "begin the hunt." The battle began with a sound that space should not have been able to carry. The human ships fired their main weapons simultaneously, and somehow the research station sensors picked up vibrations that felt like the roar of enormous predators. War Chief watched in horror as projectiles the size of small buildings flew toward his fleet. These were not energy beams that his ship's shields could deflect. These were solid pieces of metal moving at incredible speed, designed to punch through armor like it was paper. "Evasive maneuvers," he screamed, but it was too late. The first projectile hit his flagship's shield generator. Instead of being deflected, it tore through the energy barrier and smashed into the ship's hull. The impact sent vibrations through the entire vessel and was thrown from his command chair. Around him, his fleet was under attack by weapons they had never seen before. The humans were not using the elegant energy warfare that most species preferred. They were throwing chunks of metal at extremely high speeds, like primitive hunters with advanced technology. But it was working. Ships designed to intimidate peaceful traders were being torn apart by human weapons that treated their armor like thin cloth. "War Chief," his tactical officer shouted, "the humans are launching small craft." On the tactical display, hundreds of tiny ships were pouring out of the human vessels. But these were not normal fighter craft. They were moving in coordinated groups, like packs of hunting animals. Admiral watched the battle from her command chair with satisfaction. The ships were built for raiding, not real combat. Their weapons were designed to threaten unarmed civilians, not fight warships built by a species that had learned warfare on a planet where everything tried to kill everything else. Fighter wings Alpha through Delta begin strafing runs on the enemy engines. Marine assault shuttles prepare for boarding operations. Her pilots responded with enthusiasm. Human fighter pilots were famous throughout the galaxy for two things: their willingness to try maneuvers that would kill most other species, and their ability to survive those same maneuvers. Commander Maria Santos led Alpha Wing in their attack run against the largest ship. Her fighter was smaller than the enemy vessel's point defense turrets, but it was also faster and more maneuverable than anything the raiders had ever faced. "Remember," she said to her pilots over the communication channel, "we want these ships disabled, not destroyed. Save the big explosions for after we get the prisoners out." Her fighters dove toward the ships at speeds that made their enemies' targeting computers malfunction. Human pilots could survive acceleration forces that would knock most aliens unconscious. They used this advantage ruthlessly. Santos flew her fighter directly between two enemy ships, forcing them to stop shooting at her or risk hitting each other. Behind her, the rest of Alpha Wing followed in perfect formation, their weapons targeting engine systems and weapon turrets with surgical precision. On the research station, Doctor watched the battle through her sensors with amazement and terror. The human ships moved like living things, coordinating their attacks with smooth efficiency. Their fighter craft flew in patterns that seemed impossible, somehow avoiding enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks of their own. Her guards were no longer paying attention to her. They were listening to panicked reports from their own ships, trying to understand how their mighty fleet was being destroyed by enemies they had never heard of. "The humans are boarding," one of them shouted. "They're cutting through our hulls." Looked at the sensor display and saw something that made no sense. Human assault craft were approaching the ships and simply flying directly into them. Instead of docking normally, they were using their ships as rams, punching holes in the enemy hulls and deploying soldiers directly into the damaged areas. War Chief tried to coordinate his fleet's defense, but it was like trying to fight a natural disaster. The humans attacked with mechanical precision, cutting off his escape routes while systematically destroying his ship's weapons and engines. "War Chief," his communications officer reported with a shaking voice, "human soldiers have boarded 3 of our ships. Our warriors are requesting immediate reinforcement." "What do you mean requesting reinforcement? Send them back up." "War Chief, you don't understand. Our warriors are hiding from the humans. They're too frightened to fight." Stared at his officer in disbelief. Warriors were feared across the sector for their strength and brutality. The idea that they would hide from any enemy was impossible to accept. But the reports kept coming in. Human soldiers were moving through ships like unstoppable forces of nature. They fought with weapons that fired physical projectiles instead of energy, wearing armor that seemed to absorb damage that would kill other species. But it was not just their equipment that made them terrifying. It was the way they moved and fought. They worked together like members of a hunting pack, communicating with hand signals and covering each other's movements. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no mercy for anyone who stood between them and their objectives. Sergeant First Class Jackson Torres kicked down the door to a holding cell and found 20 alien prisoners huddled together in fear. Most were researchers and civilians from various peaceful species. They looked up at him with terror in their eyes. "Easy," Torres said in Galactic Standard, lowering his weapon. "We're here to get you out." Behind him, his Marines were securing the rest of the ship. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, neutralizing warriors before the raiders even knew they were under attack. Years of training and combat experience made them more dangerous than enemies who relied on size and intimidation. "Is Doctor among you?" Torres asked the prisoners. A small alien with 4 arms raised her hand nervously. I am Doctor. Good, we received your message. You're going home. Torres activated his communicator. Admiral, we have the researcher, beginning prisoner evacuation. Acknowledged, Sergeant. All enemy ships are now disabled. Bring our people home. The battle was over. 8 ships floated dead in space, their weapons destroyed and their engines offline. Most of their crews were either captured or had abandoned ship in escape pods. Not a single human ship had taken serious damage. War Chief sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the tactical display in defeat. His mighty fleet had been destroyed in less than 30 minutes by enemies who fought like the monsters from ancient legends. A human soldier appeared on his bridge, moving so quietly that did not notice him until he spoke. War Chief, you are under arrest for piracy, slave trading, and attacks on civilian targets. Looked up at the human warrior. The soldier was not particularly large compared to but something about his eyes made feel like prey being studied by a predator. Who are you? He whispered. We are the species your people should have learned to avoid, the Marine replied. We are what happens when hunters become civilized, but don't forget how to hunt. As was led away in restraints, he finally understood the stories his people had dismissed as myths. Humans were not just another species with advanced technology. They were evolution's answer to the question of what happened when a world tried to kill everything on it, and something survived by becoming more dangerous than the world itself. Doctor stood in the docking bay of Terra's Vengeance and tried to understand what she was seeing. The human ship was enormous inside, with corridors wide enough for vehicles to drive through. But what surprised her most was how clean and organized everything was. She had expected the ship of legendary warriors to be crude and violent-looking. Instead, she found herself in a vessel that looked more like a mobile research station than a warship. Human soldiers walked past her with quiet efficiency, their weapons secured and their manner professional. Doctor. She turned to see a human woman approaching. The woman was tall and strong-looking, but her face was kind. She wore a uniform with symbols that marked her as a leader. I am Admiral, welcome aboard Terra's Vengeance. Are you injured? Shook her 4 hands nervously. No, I am not hurt. You are the leader of these ships. Yes, I understand you sent a distress signal that reached our network. You accidentally used one of our restricted communication frequencies. I am sorry, said quickly. I did not know. I was frightened and used all the channels I could find. Admiral smiled, and it was a genuine expression of warmth. You have nothing to apologize for. You called for help and we came. That's what the frequency is for. A human medical officer approached and spoke quietly to Admiral. All the rescued prisoners have been examined and treated. Minor injuries only. We're ready to return them to their home systems. Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Make sure they have everything they need for the journey. Watched this exchange with growing confusion. These humans had just destroyed an entire raider fleet in less than an hour. She had heard their weapons firing, had seen their fighter craft moving in impossible patterns, had watched their soldiers board enemy ships like unstoppable forces. But now they were treating rescued prisoners with gentle care and genuine concern. The same beings who had terrified the into surrender were making sure she had medical attention and safe passage home. I don't understand, she said to Admiral. Your people. The stories say you are monsters, death world predators who kill without mercy. Admiral was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through the docking bay's viewing window. Come with me, Doctor. I'd like to show you something. They walked through the ship's corridors together, saw human crews working to repair the vessels they had damaged, making them safe to fly again. In the medical bay, human doctors were treating wounded raiders with the same care they gave to rescued prisoners. My people come from a planet called Earth, Admiral explained as they walked. Everything on our world tried to kill everything else. We survived by becoming very good at hunting and fighting, but we also learned that life is precious because it's so fragile. They entered a large room filled with growing plants under artificial lights. The air smelled fresh and clean, like the gardens of. We could have become a species that destroys everything it touches, continued. Some of us argued for that path when we first reached space, but we chose differently. We decided to use our skills to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Looked around the garden in amazement. You grow food plants on your warships. Among other things, Dr. Martinez tells me you're a who studies healing organisms. Would you like to see our medical cultivation labs? Led her to another section where human scientists were growing various alien plant forms in carefully controlled environments. Recognized several species that were used to create advanced medicines. We study healing as much as we study warfare, explained. Our medical teams develop treatments that we share freely with other species. The same minds that design our weapons also design tools to save lives. A young human scientist approached them. Admiral, we've finished analyzing the research data that Doctor transmitted with her distress call. This work is remarkable. These healing organisms could revolutionize medical treatment across the galaxy. Felt tears of relief in her eyes. My research survived. More than survived, the scientist said excitedly. We've already begun growing cultures based on your data. With your permission, we'd like to help you continue this work. We can provide funding, equipment, and protection from anyone who might try to stop you. Protection from people like the Admiral nodded. The Horde no longer exists as a threat. Most of their ships are destroyed or captured. Their leaders are in custody. Word of what happened here will spread quickly through criminal networks. They returned to the bridge, where the main viewing screen showed space around the research station. Human ships were everywhere, some towing damaged vessels, others scanning for survivors or salvageable equipment. What will happen to the warriors you captured? Asked. They'll be tried for their crimes and imprisoned. Some may choose to work in labor programs to pay compensation to their victims. We don't execute prisoners, even ones who show no mercy to others. Studied Admiral's face. Why, they would have killed me without hesitation. Because we choose to be better than our enemies. Our strength comes from protecting life, not destroying it. When we kill, it's only to stop those who would kill others. A communication officer approached. Admiral, we've received messages from 17 different species governments. They're thanking us for eliminating the threat and requesting information about our patrol schedules in this sector. Smiled. Send them our standard response. Tell them the hunter fleets patrol wherever they're needed, whenever they're called. She turned back to, Doctor, we're going to leave a quantum communication beacon near your research station. It's connected directly to our emergency network. What does that mean? It means if anyone threatens you or your work again, you can call for help instantly, and we'll come running. Felt overwhelmed by emotions she could not name. Why would you do this for me? I'm not even human. Because you dedicated your life to healing others. Because you risked everything to save knowledge that could help millions of people. Because when faced with evil, you chose to call for help rather than give up. Admiral activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all vessels, prepare for departure. Our mission here is complete. As the human fleet prepared to leave, found herself standing beside Admiral on the bridge. Through the viewing screen, she could see her research station, damaged but repairable. Human engineering teams had already stabilized its orbit and restored basic life support. Admiral, she said quietly, what should I tell others about what happened here? Was quiet for a long moment, watching as the last of the prisoner transport ships jumped to hyperspace. Tell them that the galaxy has guardians. Tell them that predators will always be hunted by something more dangerous than they are. And tell them that if they ever need help, they know how to reach us. The human ships began disappearing into hyperspace one by one, their massive forms vanishing in flashes of light. Soon only Terra's vengeance remained, its dark bulk silhouetted against the stars. "Doctor," Admiral said as they prepared for their own departure, "you accidentally discovered something important today. You found that even in the darkest places of the galaxy, there are those who will answer when the innocent call for help." She handed a small device. "This is a direct communicator linked to the beacon we left behind. It connects to the same frequency you used before, but now you'll know exactly what you're calling." "The hunter frequency," said softly. "Yes, use it if you ever need us again, or if you hear about others who do." Terra's vengeance jumped to hyperspace, leaving Doctor alone with her rescued research and a new understanding of the galaxy she lived in. She looked at the quantum beacon the humans had left behind, a small silver device that orbited her station like a protective guardian. News of the Horde's destruction spread across space faster than the ships that carried it. In criminal hideouts and raider bases throughout the sector, evil beings suddenly found peaceful careers more appealing than piracy. The stories grew with each telling, but the core message remained the same. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, hunters waited for the call of the innocent. And when that call came, they answered with a force that made monsters wake up screaming from nightmares. Doctor returned to her research with new purpose and new protection. Her healing organisms thrived in their rebuilt laboratory, watched over by a beacon that promised safety from those who would use knowledge to heal others. And in the quantum signal that connected her station to the human fleets, Admiral's final message played on repeat. "The frequency you used is monitored continuously. If someone threatens the innocent again, call us. We'll come hunting."